Welcome to Driven, the Unscripted Success podcast, with your hosts, Mike Menino and Nariman Hamden, bringing you insights and stories on achieving personal, professional, and financial success.
Hi, everybody. It's Michael Menino, and welcome to Driven, Unscripted Success podcast. Today on the podcast, we're interviewing professionals who share their experience with you, the audience, and how they got to where they're at today. And zooming from the beautiful island of Miami, Florida, we got Naga. How you doing, young man?
Pretty good. How are you doing?
Better than I deserve. Do me a favor. We've been talking a little bit off camera, and tell everybody, where you're at now, what you do, and how you got to where you're at.
So I've been a robotics engineer career-wise for the past better decade and a software engineer. Most of my history is behind robotics, software engineering, and defense. I've been a government contractor before, held clearances, and those sort of things have kept me sticky with the government because I love working for the US DoD. I love providing solutions to warfighters and both first responders. I will support law enforcement when the chain of custody is right. I do have some I'm glad we have body cams, and there are things that we can do to increase the auditability of evidence, because one of the things I've noticed in the past couple of decades is deepfakes are going to be a problem, and we need chain of custody programs more than ever.
Agreed. I heard they're now they're becoming, how do I put this? They're leaving the option of failure out of the hands of the officers because they have a two-way communication with their superior. So, and help me if I'm wrong on this, so that if they're talking to somebody, their commander can talk in their ear and say, you should be doing this.
Well, and that's the whole point of these Blue Force trackers is, right, let's keep people.
Yeah, you were showing that. Explain that.
So this is a radio for Blue Force tracking. What that means is you put this on your kit, on your shoulder, on your back. You can even put an antenna if you want one of those super fancy vests with the embedded antennas.
That's cool. Can you even plug it into the vest?
Yes, exactly. They literally will take the antenna wire, and they have graphite antennas on their vest, and those will communicate to the satellite. Instead of having a big clunky box, you can put this in the back of instead of having to be on your shoulder or on top of your helmet, you can put this anywhere else, and now it's a lot more comfortable to move.
What about the microphone?
The larger model we have, this is a data tracker only. So data and text. So you can send text messages with your cell phone via ATAC, the Android Team Awareness Kit. You connect to Bluetooth to the radio, and now you have connection to the ATAC application through our plugin, and you can communicate via text or position points, because it's a lot easier to see points on a map than actually describing your location. I'm 5 feet down this tree. What tree?
Yeah, what tree? Well, I think that I've seen a lot of cop shows. One of my favorite shows, and they're very good at saying going southbound on Wilmington, going eastbound on Heights Road, they're really good at, trying to describe where they're at. But if they don't need to, you're saving their brain capacity for a high speed chase or whatever they're doing. You know what I mean?
And the 5 or 6 times they have to radio in their position back to command, right? Because that's a tricky thing is when you're under stress, let's say you go into a hot situation, such as like a accident on the road, right? Mm-hmm. Pulling over is a risk. You don't know if the guy down the highway is going to smash into the vehicle that's been destroyed or into your vehicle.
You don't know if the car is going to blow up. You don't know if the car is going to blow up. You don't know what. You're stepping in. I really think that police officers and fire professionals are heroes for a living, for doing what they do.
Right, and that's exactly what I'm trying to get at, is they're high-risk professions. And the example in the Idaho situation, in Idaho, the fire department responded, I don't know if you remember, it was earlier this year, but for some random shooter started shooting at the fire department. Guys responding to a remote fire in, I think, Idaho, and 2 officers down from a nut job, right? I mean, and the crazy thing is you could hear in the recordings of the after-action reports, where are you? Seriously, that's literally in the right. And this is one of those things. Is how do we solve these problems? And this is why I started this company. Why Don has been doing this for the better part of a decade through L3 Harris, and then he founded 5X, and it's been about what 5-7 years with this. Feels like 7. It's 5. But and is how do we solve that problem? Even for combat controllers in the military field, how do we not drop bombs on our own dudes? Because that's what our whole job is. Combat controller, CCT. Go ask a bunch of airmen, and they'll say, yeah, we had to be on the field with the radios 100 meters away trying to describe where to hit that target.
So I've studied that a little bit too, and they call it painting something. So if there's a building that the bad guys are shooting out of, they have this laser and they paint the building, and then usually the armament, the airplanes, the tanks, and can see where it's painted. But they don't know which. I hate to say this, they don't know what end of the paint is it. Because a laser beam comes out from their gun to the bad guy's place, and sometimes they hit. In like you're trying to say is you're trying to identify the good guys.
Yep, this is Blue Force, not Red Force. I mean, we could make this Red Force tracking, but they're called counter UAS solutions today.
I don't think they're the bad guys who are going to be holding the Red Force.
Well,
Blue Force tracking, that is brilliant. Naga, that is really good. That is really cute. Now, this is Blue Force tracking, not Red Force tracking. And if you could get the bad guys to hold it, that'd be grade A, man. Work on that. Work on something. Here, just hold this. All right, cool. What's this? No, don't worry about it. Boom!
Not easy.
We fixed the problem. It's a Blue Force tracker, not a Red Force tracker.
I mean, one of the example use cases is we're working with companies right now to take these 5-inch drones. You can put them on my dog. Oh my God, talking about dog use. Want to get up on here?
You got one of your trainees?
Yeah, one of my subjects. Not kidding. This boy.
Oh, there you go. What's his name?
It goes Brownie. He's a good English bulldog.
That's awesome. And so you were talking off camera that you do the dog tracking too.
Exactly. You can put this on the dog, and that drone can follow it because it has a Misty and the dog has a Misty. And that's only about a 20-minute battery life, but that's fine when you're only going to release the dog from the handler. Well, I mean, he's not an attack dog; he's a service animal.
Right.
But you get the idea.
He's not going to take somebody out. Brownie's not going to take somebody out.
No, he's going to give you therapeutic emotional support. The quite opposite. Maybe make you want to live a little bit longer.
There you go. So
he's a good boy.
With your software, you can track the good guys and the good dogs.
Exactly. And the big thing for us is getting use cases for beyond line of sight. And what beyond line of sight means is remote control off a satellite. That's what most beyond line of sight radios are referring to. There's a couple that are using terrestrial networks, but they're not as common. And they require a lot more control, right? You need to control that region. You need to keep those antennas up. Versus satellites, very few actors have means of countering that.
Well, but the satellites are going to be up there, and they're not your responsibility. Like you said, the antennas are the other people's responsibility, and if sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. And it seems like you were mentioning earlier off camera that some systems typically, during an emergency situation, a fire or hurricane, some systems don't work. And your system does better because it's satellite based, correct?
Yep, and that's exactly what we're talking about. Is let's even take something that's not so disastrous like a hurricane, but let's say you have a big concert. Taylor Swift came to town. Guess what? Same problem. The towers are now overloaded, and we literally have T-Mobile coming up with mobile trucks trying to help support the back end and get all 1,000 people calls through, right?
Gotcha.
So even for that, Team Awareness Kit helps for a lot of operators in those situations as well. A lot of police departments will use ATAC for tracking their teammates and any suspicious behavior. Or even for paramedics, they can drop points. Hey, I need water for this guy. hey,
There
this
you go.
guy's overdosing. We
Right.
need no, what is it? Novocaine? I forget what it is. What
Narcos.
Narcan. I think it's Narcan.
Narcan. Yeah, it's Narcan.
Yeah. But they can go and drop the point, and they don't have to like call over the radio 20 times and take up that space, right? It's you only have that radio time period, and you got like 50 people on that, so they
Right.
all have to share that window. They can all not transmit. A lot of old school radios won't allow that.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, what is one of the biggest challenges you had to overcome in your career?
A lot of my challenges as of late have been, well, the biggest challenge I would say is trying to do this stuff alone. And that was, I wouldn't say a mistake, but it takes a lot more effort to build a company alone. And you
Great.
have to end up focusing on certain things like revenue is king regardless of any business you're in. But
Mhm.
you end up having to focus a lot more on how do I decouple myself from those hours
Mhm.
and not end up staying an independent contractor, right? Because
Mhm.
at that point, I'm just working as an employee with extra steps.
All right. Yeah. Hey, yeah, exactly. Someone was mentioning to me earlier today, their attorney, and they didn't set up a systems and process in their business, and they have to be there the whole time, couldn't go on vacation. So I'm you're like you just said, you're kind of an employee.
Yep. And
Yep.
that's where it gets tricky is like even for Impatient Software, we became resellers of 5X's radios because the equity ownership for me wasn't enough, and I wanted to start driving more sales
There you
independently
go.
without having to, how do you put it, build another product again and
There you go.
leveraging the network we have today. So,
Hmm.
and we already have sales. The question is scale. And to get to that, I guess I'm privileged because I got a product that actually sells.
You
Right.
got you got a great product.
Right. And that's tricky to get to. It's not easy and it's not trivial to anyone who can get there. Right? Like 90% of businesses fail within the first 5 years.
Mhm.
So, and then when you go to products from software, it's like 10x is harder. So you might as well
Mhm.
say you're 1% lucky if you're in the 10-year mark.
There
Um,
you go. Good point.
right. So this is one of those tricky things is like, how do you survive in a business like a cockroach? Whether that means killing products, cutting back, or scaling, right? If
Hmm.
sometimes you need, if you don't get enough revenue, you need to scale up so you can fill butts and seats sorts of contracts. Like even for government
Hmm.
contracting, hey, you may be building a product that's called internal research and development. A lot of people aren't willing to stomach 2 years of pouring money in and possibly 1 to 2 years again of no earnings on that product, right? Because you got to market it, you got to find who will buy it, you got to go figure out the procurement processes. If you're going for government, it's 10x is worse than commercial because commercial processes, if there's a need, you can bypass a lot of the bureaucrats. For DoD customers, public safety, unless you're willing to spend 150K per politician, very hard, right?
I'm not sure how many politicians you got to pay to get that done.
Yeah, and this is one of those tricky things. I've even talked to at MIT's dual use venture course is like changing policy is very tricky. And when your
Yeah.
technology requires policies to change, like a good example is hybrid generators for electric vehicles. If you didn't know
Hmm.
this in Canada, the moment you put a generator on a vehicle, you have to change the emission standard, and there's no emission standards for moving vehicles at that vogue. So you can't put a generator on a vehicle and you can't build that EV. Edison Motors is going through that challenge right now. And they're working with,
Well, I know a volt, the volts, not the bolts, the volts. Years ago, they had a generator on an electric car. What happens to them when they go to Canada, or they couldn't be sold in Canada?
yep. And this is the other thing is US car laws are very different than international car
Yes,
laws.
yes,
And this
very
is
much
one of the,
yes.
and this is what I remember from the Edison conversation is how do you work around this policy thing, right? And you will sometimes have to put politicians' money. And at that point, you almost are stuck to getting VC because you need external money. You can't bootstrap through that. Most businesses, it's like 300K, right? So
Hmm.
that's a mortgage. today that's half a mortgage, but you get the point.
I get the point. It's expensive.
Right.
If
Every failure, right? Every time you try to fail that big in scale, how can you make your experiment small and avoid having to deal with the scale of that failure, right? And that's one of the things that I always try to tell people is you have an idea, validate it, find the scale that you can tolerate. Don't try to go for the whole enchilada, because if you try to eat the whole enchilada without any real revenue, you're going to be taking somebody else's money and you turn into a serf, essentially, because now they own your idea. Or you're going to have to raise more capital from them, and they're going to have to take more equity because they're taking more risk. That's the end of the story, right?
Agreed. So we had talked a little bit off camera. You said something that kind of blew my mind. What is a hackathon?
A hackathon is a event where people come together to program or build some end product, whether they're competing or they're collaborative, right? Some of them are collaborative. Like in Miami, we had a hackathon where people got robot arms, and there are only 2 physical robots at the hackathon. So teams started conglomerating around those 2 hardware teams. And it became more of a collaborative effort rather than here we're competing. Yeah, team versus team. Versus other hackathons are much more structured. Anything from Major League Hacking, MLH is a great league. They will help certify and treat it more like a traditional double match elimination or something like that for actual competition.
So you made mention. I thought the hackathon sounds to me like you're trying to hack into something. But what you're trying to do is, but what you're trying to do is save people from getting hacked. Is that true?
No, you're building products. A hackathon, originally a hackathon, hack together. Think of that. I hacked together, right? Like the old meaning of hack was literally you broke a bunch of trees and you hacked the structure together.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's awesome.
So, but to your point, there are other hackathons that are more capture the flag, penetration testing. DEF CON is a great conference to go for that. They have hackathons. The Army partners with DEF CON now, where there's a Hack the Sat challenge. So those exist. There are plenty of those challenges. I've been part of those as well. They're a little bit different where you're right. They're more focused on cybersecurity, penetration, and how do you keep that network safe? Less so on like, hey, how are you building a product, right? Or how are you servicing your customers? Right. That's what I'm talking about. When I think of hackathon, I'm more focused on the startup world. But again, there are many different types of hackathons.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. You mentioned earlier today. I've never heard of that before. It's probably the coolest thing I could ever think of.
And it's also great for early startups to validate their ideas, get in front of people and pitch. If you're an early startup, a hackathon is a great place to go like, hey, I want to build, let's say you're a software services company, a SaaS company, right? You want to add a new feature, but you want to get money for that. Well, guess what? You can use the hackathon to leverage for a grant and use it as an opportunity to pitch your product. But again, how many people are doing that? Very few. And the ones I've seen do that are pretty successful because you come in with a strategy. And this is the other thing I will also mention is before you go to a hackathon, understand the rules. Understand what you're signing up for. If you don't understand what your rules are, you're never going to be able to place because you don't know how to score. And even when you're solving for a business, right? If you're building a business to sell or building a business to exit with, or even keeping the house like Ford style, right? If you're going to go do that, you're going to have a lot more vertical controls and there's a lot more complexity in that. But I like to say build to scale because at one point you're going to get sick of working on this problem. What is that dollar point? What is your exit point? And if you don't come to an agreement early on, you're going to have messy equity terms when building your startup. And hackathons, great way to get like a microdose of that experience without having to commit to the hellhole of building a startup because it is hell.
I agree every day. I've started a few companies and it's a grind. It's a grind. Hey, Naga, there's a lot of competition in your space. What do you think sets you guys apart? What comes easy to you that comes challenging to everybody else?
for me, I can easily get people involved, and I'm willing to add people onto the team when they can provide value for a grant and or feature or capability. Right? Collaboration is a key way to get yourself in front of new contracts or even new relationships, right? Like if you can do a favor and solve somebody else's problem, whether that's free or for a payment, or even just solve their problem and ask for a reduced payment later, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people are going to come back as reoccurring customers. Even
Yep.
if it's like a year or two later, you'll have those repeat customers because you're solving their problem at the time and not so focused on getting the payment. But it's one of those you have to be open minded and you have to be able to tolerate risk. So you better have something in the bank to be able to take those bets.
Right. Yeah. When we do multifamily and we set aside a large portion for contingencies. Like, there's operating expenses. Some companies, when they buy a multifamily, they have 3 months. We have 6 months of operating expenses. So, and the way I like to describe it is if you got money, there's really no emergency.
Yep, and then that's also even when you're raising.
Right.
If you're raising money from VC, don't act like you're desperate because one, here's my biggest advice with the VC: they're vultures. Two, you better keep your control as long as you can, as strong as you can, because that's where your value is as a startup founder. You are the idea. Most people are not going to take their business more than a year out of failure, right? Or no revenue, right? So if you really are building a company, you're going to be committing to it almost 2 years without seeing revenue. Maybe it's a soft agreement where you're doing this part-time or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
If you go hard full-time, you're a lot of risk. I commend you. I'm not as strong of a man. I've always gone back and gotten a job, as I would say, to help de-risk myself.
De-risk yourself. I like that. You got a job to de-risk yourself. That's a strategy. Like one of my students was telling me he wanted to quit, and then I'm not going to say who, he wanted to quit what he was doing as an accountant to do real estate. And I'm like, all right, cool. What's your plan? And he said, I got this girl that we're getting married to, and I don't need to work. She can support us both while I do this. And he did it. He did his first deal, and he made like 60,000. That's what he made, as an accountant. And then he goes, I'm trying to find the other deal, and I got a part-time job to. What did you say? So, how did you say that? Supplement your de-risk,
right?
De-risk your situation. And he de-risked it for a little while before he got back into it. So it was kind of cool. I like the way you put that. You de-risk your situation.
Yeah, because not everyone has family or support. In
Correct.
most startup founders, it's a lonely space here. Go look at the statistics, and half of us have mental health issues. So
here's one for you. I got ADHD, and I found out if you have ADHD, you have a 300% proclivity to become an entrepreneur. So it's like, all right. So if you have disorder, you're gonna start this business, right? Yeah, that's pretty much it.
That's hilarious, but it's very true. You have to be kind of like different from willing to take the societal norm, and it's not going to be easy, even for anyone. Like for me, I still get daily calls about my father saying, "Where's the money?" Right? And you're going to have those tough conversations, right? Some family are more accepting, some there's not, and some people don't have anyone to even nag them, right? Right?
Yeah,
even
there you go. But a lot of people nag themselves pretty well too.
And that's the point. You gotta drive. You gotta find a way to survive as a cockroach in a business. And if you're not willing to survive like a cockroach, do you really want to be in the business? Get a good job. And there are good jobs, right? Like there are good jobs. You just got to build the relationships. You got to go out there and find the right opportunity. Like there's opportunities in Amazon. There are opportunities in any company you think of in an industry. You just got to find the right people. I mean, even at Amazon, there's terrible opportunities. Don't get me wrong. There are good opportunities in Amazon. There are terrible opportunities in Amazon. Amazon Robotics, I've gone through 3 times through the ringer, and the contract was on the table. And I came day one, and it's all backed out for 2 times in a row. It took the third contract, and I left a job on the second one. That was crazy. So, but it took that much attempts and trials to figure out who are the right customer. And
Yeah.
when I did get to that management team, I realized it's not the right customer I want. And it's because the standards there require a little bit different than maybe a different part of Amazon. Like Kuiper has a different need and structure than Amazon Robotics. And you got to also understand the history behind these little factions inside this mega corporation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, because even if you go to any of these big companies, any Fortune 500 company, there's all these little factions that have to vie for their own budgets, right?
Mm-hmm.
So and this is where it gets messy and hard. And even when you exit that corporate world, you're still going to deal with it. Now it's your headache, right? And it's different, right? Now you're sitting at the end of the other end of the table. If you've been an employee your whole life, you never had to worry about what's my budget for this year? Can I even keep my job? Will they be
Right.
able to pull revenue and stuff like that? A lot of
Mm-hmm.
startup founders I've met are a lot more conscious of that, especially repeat founders or people who've even failed, right? Like I look for, most VCs will recognize this too, is like, even if you failed at a startup, you've at least gone through the attempt, you've gone through the failure. What have you learned from it? And back to that Edison thing, you might take 1,000 failures for that one success,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
you gotta grit yourself for that. And to that point, are you willing to have that grit? Are you
Mm-hmm.
willing to literally soldier it for a long time? Like 2 years is the minimum for most businesses. So
Yeah, the break even. You're talking break
yep,
even, not really making money.
correct. And this is the challenging thing for a lot of people, and I always try to encourage it is like save around 2 to 3 years of income, and you won't feel the burden of like failure as much. But at the same token, you won't be driven as much. So, right, having that hard edge for some people is like putting the donkey on like high gear, and it just starts
Right.
hitting it, right?
Right.
And for other people, they need that space so they can build consistency,
Yep.
right?
I
Those
agree.
are
I
big
agree with you wholeheartedly.
differences.
Hey,
And same,
wrapping up. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, that's it.
So wrapping up, what do you got? What exciting plans you got for the next 6 to 12 months? What do you got coming up?
Well, we're raising in a pre-seed round. We haven't evaluated which evaluation we want to target. We're looking at 1 to 5 million, and we're mainly doing it for these hardware products. We have another thermal cam coming out, and it does it via video transmission. The pre-seed was mainly for that, but now I'm considering beyond line of sight because the market is demanding it. The market is
Agreed.
asking for more beyond line of sight sensors. I've seen multiple publications out of the White House budget where the executive authority has given, I think, like 150K to most smaller agencies to act on.
Mm-hmm.
So we may be adding a lot more support to the Iridium products we're serving with 5X, both the Misty and the newest DNX product that's coming out. DNX is a lot more secure for military use cases, and it's the latest gen of Iridium's communication waveforms. That's a fancy way of saying it's the new 5G coming out of Iridium.
Nice. Oh, that's awesome, man. Congratulations. And if anybody would like to get in contact with you, how would they do that?
Via email at naga@impatient.software or via phone number. I'm not going to give that out here. I don't like calls.
Might not be a good idea, but you can get on the website, or you can get, what's the name of the website?
Impatient.software.
There you go. That's how they can contact you.
Yep. If you guys need any help with government contracting or advice on that sort of stuff, I can give you some consultation. A good example is, are you ready for a dual use case for your product? If you're a commercial product, can you pivot into defense? I can provide some of those insights. And one of those things is like, if you're going to take money, understand your asks and be careful of who you take your money from, because a good example is going through different accelerators. Some accelerators will take more. Other accelerators are no equity and just focused on making sure you have a sound business model. So
Mm-hmm.
be careful, be smart, and if you need advice, you know where to find me. Naga
Sounds good,
at
man.
impatient.software or at impatient.software.
Naga, thanks very much for being on the show. Really do appreciate it. And for all you for the listeners, just please like and subscribe, and appreciate your time. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for listening to Driven, the Unscripted Success Podcast. Want to share your story? Apply to be a guest at drivensuccesspodcast.com/guest.